The series begins in the future in the city of New London, at a time when technology has developed to the point that humans are able to make babies by themselves in the laboratory, and the idea of reproduction from a husband and wife is not available, and scientists make such a layer of humans, who are alpha, beta, gamma, and delta. The alpha and beta layers remain the smartest and most distinguished of the rest. As for gamma and delta, they are the lower classes who are forced to do work that they do not like or enjoy. They are also punished with electricity if any one of them objects. Despite the fact that New London spreads morals and virtue, it is not allowed for any individual in it to marry or associate with a person for a long time, otherwise he will be accused of the crime of selfishness, and this is because he chose a person for him or monopolized himself over one person, and it does not benefit any individual in the city that he uses the method. The old age is in childbearing, and this is because only the government is in its hands to make new embryos, their guests to the city, and every individual in the people remains watched through a specific lens in his eyes, and the government sees him through it in all his cases, whether he is sleeping or even in the bathroom. And the idea of privacy remains with the city, and it is useless for anyone to remove the lens from his eye, otherwise it will be considered a moral crime and he will be punished for it, and it is forbidden for anyone to display any negative reaction, whether sadness, hatred or hatred. This is because only feelings of happiness are allowed in the city, and it remains obligatory for anyone who feels any feelings different from happiness to take soma pills, which are happiness pills and mood adjustment. That is why New Zealand is preferred as the only city that does not have any kind of crime or quarrels or problems, because all people are happy at the same time. In a city adjacent to the city of New London, which would be called the city of savages, are savages, and normal people live in it, and those who rejected the system of the city of New London and decided to live their lives freely and remain, unlike New London, they are able to marry and succeed and choose their work by choice, but they remain living in poverty and famine, and they are controlled by the city of New London, which considers them a zoo and lets their children watch them while they are eating food and behaving in strange ways. The city of savages becomes a city isolated from all the residents of New London. One of the alphas, who is her manager, calls her and tells her it's done. He monitored her having a relationship with Alpha Harry 22 times, and that this is considered a selfish and immoral act on her part, so Linda denies that this happened, but the manager shows her all her clips with Harry and asks her to take happiness and calm down. In a government building, a report comes to Alpha Bernard, who is a subordinate investigator. He goes to the government and goes to the place of the corpse, and he finds a large number of people gathered around the body of one of the workers, who fell from a very high place, and the friend of the deceased worker blooms while he is captivated and sad for his friend, so he distributes happiness pills to all those who saw the corpse in order to reduce their shock. It is possible that the worker fell from this place and thinks that he may throw himself, but he thinks about how someone can still have feelings to the extent that he commits suicide, and this is because soma pills do not allow the presence of any feelings, sadness or loneliness, which are the feelings that are the cause of suicides. The case of the worker is the first of its kind, so Bernard decides to go to his friendship with Lillian, who is one of the alphas responsible for parties in the city, where the residents of New London entertain themselves, and Bernard tells her what happened, but Lillian excludes the possibility the worker committed suicide. And this is because there is no one in the city suffering from psychological problems, so Bernard returns home while he is thinking and removing the lens in his eye so that he can think calmly, but he is summoned by his manager, and the one who tells him that he does not deserve to be from Alpha Plus, and this is because he lacks firmness, commitment, and strength. He decides that he has a week's vacation and travels to the city of Svash as a tourist trip to calm his nerves. After a while, Linda comes home. And you know what happened with Bernard and who became friends. He gets annoyed. He will travel to the city and leave it, but Bernard tells her that he has developed strange feelings after the accident and that he still feels lonely. Linda decides to travel with him to the city, and we go to the city of savages, and their bazaar. John, and whoever remains a hard-working young man, spends on his addicted mother, but he suffers from beatings and bullying from his friends and his manager, who they consider a weak person. John returns home exhausted and sad, and tries to help his mother, bypassing his father who left her and traveled, but his mother is waiting for him to return, refusing to let her forget or live her life. At home, John hears the door banging, and he meets his friend Jane, who asks him to talk privately. But suddenly a gang appears behind him and kidnaps John, and you go to a place far from the city, and the leader of the gang blooms, and what will be her name, and she tells John they are a rebel sect seeking to take over the city of New London, which they have controlled for years. This is because they are tired of poverty and hunger, treating them as if they were, and this is because John is responsible for the Department of Arms and Ammunition, and she asks him to replace the fake bullets with real bullets in order to attack visitors to New London on their next trip, but John is very afraid and refuses to do the task, so she threatens him that if he does not carry out her orders, she will kill him and his mother. John fears for his mother and is forced to agree. On the second day in New London, Bernard and Linda's trip to Savage City is being prepared, and they are boarding a plane that will take them to the city in only 10 minutes. And there they stay in a hotel for visitors to New London. They have the hotel worker and the tourist attractions that they can visit during their trip with special instructions. Linda is fascinated by the new society, in which women become pregnant, people get married, they live together forever. They also go to the church where they worship God. She sees people suffocating. Expressing her anger and raising her voice, she sees their eating habits. What remains strange, the harmony of people together and their freedom that she has never felt and achieved. With the place at a wedding party and a large number of visitors to the city of New London, suddenly one of the people gets a gun and hits the groom. And the person with a gun is surprised that the gun has a real shot. And he thinks that the groom is entertaining, but it turns out that the gun is real, and the townspeople bloom with pistols, and they beat visitors to New London. And Bernard and Linda see what is happening, so they quickly run away from the place. And they hide in one of the warehouses, but they discover that Bernard was shot in his arms, and Linda meets the townspeople looking for them, and you know that they target them in particular, and that what happened is not just an accident. And suddenly, John comes to see them. They are afraid and hidden. Instead of surrendering, he decides to take them home with him and protect them. At home, his mother tries to treat Bernard, and she manages to get the bullet out of his body, but suddenly the door slams. And Jane blooms, who keeps looking for me everywhere, and this is because they keep killing all the visitors except them. John tells her that he doesn't know where they are. But Jane is suspicious of him and tells him that she knows he is a weak person by ordering him to tell her where they are, but John swears to her that he doesn't know, and that he utters their words as they agreed, but Jane prefers not to believe him, and you look everywhere. In the house, meanwhile, Bernard and Linda remain hidden. In a place in the house, Linda tried to muffle Bernard's voice as he entered me. The stroke of a pen because of the bullet. Jane hears them and raises the gun on John. And she asks him to take her place, but John refuses, and before Jane kills him, John's mother blooms behind her, and stab her with a knife and kill her. She tells John that they must return Bernard and Linda to New London before she takes her to reveal them, so they ride Arabic, and who remains the first time. Bernard and Linda ride it. John's mother drives them into the woods, until they reach the city limits, and they find that the visitors' bus is fond of, and they know that it is the beginning of a real surah, and on the border between Bine in a magnetic field that does not allow anyone from the city of savages to cross, and whoever tries to pass will die burnt. John's mother confesses to them that she is from New London, and she was in the city of savages on a trip with John's father, but she remained pregnant with John, and she decided that she would rather be in the city. What you left behind, but John's father then objected, and he decided that he would return to the city from others, but after he promises her that he will return to her again, and before they reach the magnetic field, they hear a voice and one of his followers runs from their side, so Linda bounces with them, and they run away from the field easily, and one of the followers behind them, but it burns and turns to ashes, and John is shocked by what he sees, and he is afraid of being infected, but his mother tells him that he is the son of his father and his mother from New London, and that he will be able to cross with them. Suddenly, he aimed a gun at him, and before she killed him, his mother rescued him and jumped with him to the city. She was shocked and followed her because they did not know that there were residents from New London among them, and on the borders of New London, the four board the private plane, which will return from the city center, and John remains shocked by what he knew about himself. It is surprising that he is on his way to a city, but suddenly he notices that his mother is in pain. He learns that she was shot in his stomach, and his mother bids him farewell, and she dies. After a while, they arrive in New London. There, Burner is treated, and John is locked up in a secluded place, and John keeps crying out while grieving over his mother's death, and he wants to go out to see her before she is buried, and dots appear, and who will be the smartest one in the whole city. She remains sympathetic to John and decides to free him so he can integrate into New London society. Chief Edo agrees and assigns Brenner the task of watching over John and trying to integrate him into society, and in another, Linda blooms, and her feelings are more developed, and she is not even affected by Soma's happiness pills, and in the city, he walks with John, who is fanatical all the time, and he refuses to take happiness pills from anyone and remains afraid of everything around him, and they arrive at the laboratory where it will take place. He made a suitable chip for John's eye, so that he would be an individual in the city, and he reveals who is responsible for the lens on John's eye, and he discovers that he has an alpha eye, and the one who is one of the rarest eyes, and the percentage of the community is 1%, and he designs a suitable slide for him, but John rejects it, and he comes out of the room. Among the people who first see him know that he is from the city of savages, and they are very afraid of him, and they look at him with strange buttons. And it annoys John very much, and he tries to run away anywhere. Suddenly he finds himself in a place full of workers, and those who are from the lower class, and those who don't have an opinion on anything, and their rights are also not equal to the rest of the classes. And John sees the friend of the person who died, and the one whose name is Direct, and he welcomes it, and with his hands from his food, John thanks him and gets along, until the president enters Ed. He hides his expression so that he doesn't get punished. Ed notices John's presence, so he asks to take a walk together, and they are convinced that he will lead him to the place he deserves to be in, and they go out together outside the city, and Admin John asks that he return to his city, but John tells him that the group will kill him if he returns. Ed tells him that there are many societies similar to that of the savage city in which he can live, and he tells him that he is sure of his words because he used to travel a lot, and John concludes that Ed is his real father, and this is because he feels that he wants to get away in any way. So John fights with him and tells him that his mother kept waiting for him for 30 years, and that he made them live like animals while he watched them from his place. He confesses and tells him that his mother was a weak person and decided to live in the world of love and dreams. John hits his father by mistake, and he sits on top of the hill, and he dies. Meanwhile, he kept looking for John everywhere, and he reached an office, and he took off his chip. He compares it to John's chip to know his true class, and belong. The two slides are identical to each other, and he knows that his hand is the same as John's father. Meanwhile, John runs away, and quickly back to the city. There, he enters one of Lillian's parties, and they notice everyone in the party and talk about it, and they are happy with his presence. She goes downstairs to get to know John and takes him and her to her place, and you want to enter into a relationship with him. Meanwhile, he arrives at the party where he knows John is, and he is sitting talking about his adventure in the city of savages, and everyone around him is impressed with what happened, and Henry comes, who will be the new manager after that, and Baheen in front of people, and he despises him because he is higher than him, gesticulate. He can't answer it, and suddenly it comes who is left to hear Henry's insult to Burner. Birded insulted, and he despises Henry and makes him look like a monster in front of people. So he is very happy and walks with someone who decides to teach him how to defend himself, and no one in New London can throw a card, and Bernard learns how to beat and come back to the party. He beats Henry hard and takes revenge on him every time he bullies him, and the people of the city will be the first time they see a quarrel, and they will be very happy, and their feelings start to change. At the end of the night, Bernard sits with Linda, and they talk to each other about the new feelings they have been feeling, and the changes that happen to them. And don't forget to subscribe to the Ladybug Synopsis channel.